Hi, my name is Kelly Thompson, and I am here today to talk to you a little bit about buying a home. Many of you may be first time home buyers, or maybe you've already purchased a home in the past. So, today, what we're going to talk about is the steps that you need to take to kind of move towards purchasing your first home. So, a lot of things come into play when you're talking about buying your first home. So you need to kind of work through those thoughts first, which is like, where do I want to live? How much I want to pay? And a lot of those can be figured out by working with a great lender. So ultimately, when it comes to like a power team for purchasing your first home, you want to make sure that you've got a real estate agent that understands you and understands what you're looking for and can help you to kind of figure out what that next home, what that move looks like for you. But also, you really want to have a trusted lender in your back pocket. So that lender is going to be the one that's going to help you to understand how much you can afford to pay for your first home. And also, not only how much can you afford to pay, but how much do you want to pay, right? So that is one thing. You may be able to purchase a home that costs $1 million, but do you want a mortgage that on a monthly basis you have to pay for that same price, right? So those are the things that you can talk through with a lender and they'll help you to understand really what you qualify for, but then what you actually want to use as your budget when looking for a home. So I will be more than happy to connect you with multiple different lenders in the area that I know and trust. There's never any type of compensation associated with that for me. It's more about me working with folks that I trust with my clients. Okay. So let's get started. This is my buyer's guide. Um, Many of you may know me from my retail store in Falls Church that I own called Stylish Patina. I've owned that shop for over 15 years now. I cannot even believe it's been that long. So I started there, but I've always had my foot in real estate. My dad has invested in real estate my entire life. So I've watched him purchase homes, purchase investment properties, and always been very interested in it. So although I've had a background in business. I got my master's in business. I was working in corporate America for many years, and then I opened the shop. I've always been interested in real estate. So, about 6 years ago, when I got my license, I knew that I wanted to offer my services to people in the area that I grew up, which is Falls Church City and beyond. So, my family and I, we live in Sleepy Hollow, but my parents still live in Falls Church City. And I do sell homes all over, both in Virginia, Maryland, and DC. I'm getting licensed in those two here in the next month. And so I'm super excited to be able to offer the service of a real estate advisor in all of those areas. Okay, so let's jump in and kind of talk about what it means to purchase your first home. What are the things you should be thinking about, and kind of what it looks like process wise as well. Okay. So, we're going to talk a little bit about, you guys know me, this is my background. And then I have a team of girls, women that I work with, men too, but I have a lot of women that I work with. So I have a team of folks that support me. I've got a transaction coordinator. So if you work with me, you will also work with her. She's the one that kind of manages the back end process. We have 5 brokers in EXP, which is my brokerage here in the Northern Virginia area. And then I've got a teammate, Megan Sills, as well, that works with me on the real estate side of things. So we've got your back no matter what it is, no matter where you want to move. I can help you move even out of the state. We've got partners all over the country that we refer folks to so that we know that they have a positive experience. Okay. So, the buying process, let's talk about that. So, ultimately, when it comes to purchasing your first home, there are a lot of things to think about. And one big thing is, where do you want to live? How much do you want to spend? And what is your timeline, right? So these are the things that we're going to talk about when we first meet. Ultimately, it can be very stressful to move. Whether you're moving to your first home or your 10th home, it doesn't really matter. It's still really stressful. So my job as a real estate agent is to help relieve some of that stress by kind of walking you through the process and providing you the support that you need in order to make it more enjoyable. So when we talk about the process, this is really what it looks like. There's 7 steps to the process. First thing you should do is be meeting with your lender. Here is, like I said before, where you're going to identify how much you can qualify for. You're going to get that pre-approval letter. That letter is going to be what we'll need when we make an offer on a home for you. So that letter proves to the folks that are selling the home that you are qualified and you are ready to purchase a home. Okay. So that is really step one. That's the first thing we want you to do so that when we're looking for homes, we know we're looking in the right price range as well, right? The second thing is identifying that price point. Like I talked about before, you may qualify for $1 million, but only want to spend 700,000, right? So this is really critical for you to understand so that again, we're looking in the right price point and that you don't fall in love with a home that you really either can't afford or you just don't want to afford. So then when we start on the search, my job is to be setting up a search for you that's curated, that's helping you to identify the areas you want to live, and also pushing you a little bit, right? A lot of folks might say, I only want to live in Falls Church City, right? Or I only want to live in Arlington. Well, those are two of the more expensive places to live. So let me help you think beyond that and figure out, okay, what other areas could you afford or what other areas will provide you the lifestyle that you want, but maybe be more in line with your budget. So that's an area because I'm from here. I was born and raised in Falls Church in Northern Virginia. I know a lot of those little hidden gems. They're areas that are still really cute, but are not as popular. So that's part of my job is to kind of bring that to you. Okay. And then as we go hunting for homes, there's a couple of different ways we can do it. I can schedule the showings. We can go together and look at homes, which I think is very valuable because then it allows me to really understand kind of what are you looking for? What's important to you when we go into a home? What are deal breakers? What are things that you're like, I absolutely dislike this. Like I do not want a home that looks like this, or I don't want, a condo that doesn't have parking, like those types of things. By looking at homes together, that's really helpful. But then after that's done, we can together kind of identify ones that maybe you want to go to an open house on, not a big deal. If there's something you love, we can always come back together and revisit it together. So after we find the home that you absolutely love, we are going to be submitting an offer. When we submit an offer, there are certain things that we need to kind of talk through, and those are called the contingencies. So those contingencies we'll talk about later in the presentation, but those are what I call our levers that we can use to kind of adjust our offer to put our best foot forward to help you get the home that you want. And then once the offer is accepted, then McLean, my TC, jumps in and she will help us to ensure that we're meeting all the appropriate deadlines to get you to the closing table. So the closing table is where you will get the keys to your new home and you'll be able to start your next chapter in your life. Okay, so setting the budget, like we talked about before, this is probably one of the most critical steps is really understanding what you can afford and what you really want to spend. Because as I said, those are two very different things. Oftentimes I will ask folks, what is on your wish list? Like, what are the things you really want? Like, do you really want a garage? Do you really want single family living? Do you really want a backyard? Is it important for you to be able to walk to restaurants? Do you need to be by the metro? Like, what are those critical things that are deal breakers for you? And based on that, it will help us to identify the homes that are worth seeing and the homes that are not worth seeing. When we talk about a down payment, that is called an earnest money deposit. So what an earnest money deposit is it's a part of our offer. So we will say basically our EMD, earnest money deposit, is going to be typically it's between 1 and 3% of the price of the home that you're looking at purchasing. And what that is it's a good faith deposit that says, I'm going to give you $10,000 EMD in good faith. It will sit in a third party area so no one can touch it. And you can hold on to that money. And if for some reason I back out of the offer without having a reasonable way to do that by using one of our contingencies, then you get to keep my money. Now, it's not very common that that happens because oftentimes, as your real estate agent, I am watching out for you and ensuring that all things are covered, right? But there, you just never know. So that is what that EMD is there for. Okay. The more EMD you put down, the more serious you look to the seller, right? So you're saying, hey, I completely know what's going on here and I am committed to purchasing your home. And so therefore, I'm going to put this really strong EMD down. So that can be what I call a lever in showing your strength of your offer. So this is just like when you work with me, you'll get this packet, like a physical version of it. So this is an area for you to kind of like write down and think through like are what of these things are very important to me. So I recommend you like actually fill it in and kind of think through the process, and it'll help you also to understand what is the most important thing for you too. Okay, so here we're talking about your lender and your pre-approval letter. So this is where you would step one, right? Reach out to a couple of different lenders, either that I provide for you or that you have. You can go to a bank, a credit union, or any other lender in the area. You can even use a lender that's not in the area. That's totally fine and very often happens nowadays. So everything can be done electronically. But the key thing here is figuring out what your budget is. Then they'll give us the pre-approval letter that we can use when submitting an offer. So building your timeline. So talking here, this talks a little bit more about also timeline for if you're buying and selling, right? So you may be a first time home buyer, but there may come a time that you sell this home and then you want to purchase another home. So you have to really kind of build out what that timeline looks like. If you have a house to sell, we have to build in the process for getting that on the market and understand if you need to sell that home to purchase your new home. Or if you're just on a timeline for, let's say, school is ending and you want to make sure you're in your new place before the next school year starts, right? So we want to think through what that takes. So ultimately, once we submit an offer, typically we want to close within 21 to 30 days. That's standard time. So you have to build in, maybe 30 days to look for a home, 30 days to close on a home. And then sometimes the home owner will want what we call a rent back period. So maybe they want 2 weeks rent back. And so then you've got an extra 2 weeks. So you're already, if you think about the timeline, 2.5 months before you're going to move into your new place. So that's why we want to kind of back into where you want to be in your house hunting process, because new homes come on the market all the time. We can't guarantee that the ones that are on the market when you're looking are going to be the ones you want. So we just want to keep that in mind. Setting up your search. So I typically will go a little bit above the budget that you're looking for. And I will also expand the areas sometimes depending on what your wish list has in it, because I want you to stretch yourself a little bit and look at things that may not be in the specific area you think you want to live, because you never know until you go into some other new areas that you haven't investigated before, if they might or might not be a good fit for you. So I do like to stretch people's eyes a little bit and have them look at some different areas as well. On the budget standpoint, I'd like you to stretch your budget a little bit because two things. One is sometimes homes get reduced, right? So if you're looking at a little bit of a higher budget and those homes aren't moving, you'll actually be seeing them and we could jump on them and maybe come in with a lower offer. The other thing is that every now and then, more often than not, people think their budget is 850 and they fall in love with the home and they realize that they're willing to push it up until to 9, right? So again, we don't want you to miss out on those homes that you may really love. So if we can look a little bit above, sometimes you never know, you may find your dream home there. Okay, so here we're talking about the different steps, right? So the EMD we discussed, the earnest money deposit. So then there are a couple other types of contingencies. So when we put our offer in, we will want to know what the EMD amount is, our deposit. Then there are three contingencies we can talk about. One is a home inspection and contingency. One is an appraisal contingency. And then the third is a finance contingency. Now, if you live or if this home is in it has an HOA, there will also be an HOA contingency of typically 3 days. So basically, that's a pretty easy one. It basically says we want to see your HOA docs and we have 3 days to review it. If we find something we don't like, we can exit the contract and take our EMD, our deposit back, right? But the other three, home inspection, appraisal, and finance, let's talk about those independently. So in the DC metro area, right, especially inside the Beltway in Northern Virginia, we are seeing a lot of waiving of contingencies in order to be very competitive when placing an offer, right? So what that means is that you are not going to be your offer will not be contingent on those specific things. So let's talk about each one. The first one is the home inspection. So what this is it's an opportunity for you to get a home inspector out there at your cost, typically around $400 to $500, and they will inspect they'll inspect the entire home, all of the major systems, and give you a good feel as to whether or not there are major issues going on with that home and what it might cost to actually fix those things. So in a home inspection, you can do what we call a void only, or you can do it where you can actually go back to the home owner and say, hey, if you'll fix X, Y, and Z, then I'll buy your home, right? And come to an agreement. So both of those options are valid. With the void only, you're basically saying, I'm going to do my home inspection for informational purposes only. Typically, we're seeing these the contingency period be anywhere from 2 days to 10 days. In our area in Northern Virginia, a little bit less. So 2 to 5 days is a little bit more standard. And a lot of people are doing what we call pre-inspection. So what that means is you go in ahead of time. Before you put your offer in, you pay to do a walk and talk, a 1 hour inspection where everything in the home is checked out. And the guy will tell you, hey, like this is a good home, a bad home. These are things you should be concerned about. I would consider X, Y, and Z, right? So it allows you to kind of know that ahead of time so you know whether or not you want to be able to waive your home inspection contingency. Waiving a home inspection contingency can make your offer much stronger. So there are a lot of reasons to do that, but it is something that you need to consider, right? So the other option, if you don't want to waive it or do the pre-inspection, would be to have your offer contingent on the home inspection. We would pick the amount of time you would have for your home inspection, and then we would decide, is this a void only, meaning we're not going to ask them for repairs, or is it a traditional home inspection where we can negotiate repairs? So that's your home inspection contingency. The next one is your finance contingency. So what this says is basically we are contingent on financing. So we are contingent upon the fact that you can get financing. So that is usually a 21-day contingency period. And what it says is if for some reason during that 21 days you cannot get your financing, then you can leave the contract and take your EMD. Okay. We are seeing this waived quite a bit in Northern Virginia right now. It is just, it's what it is. If it's a home that is not quite as popular, we see them, but a lot of times we're seeing the waiving of the home inspection of the finance contingency. So what goes hand in hand with your finance contingency is your appraisal contingency. So same thing as saying the home offer is contingent on the appraisal. So if the appraisal comes in, let's say you're buying a home for $750,000. Let's say it gets appraised and it comes in at $700,000. So what the appraisal contingency does is it says like, okay, well, the house didn't appraise. If you want to exit the contract because it didn't appraise for the offer price, then you can leave and take your EMD, right? So with the appraisal contingency, that is just another protection mechanism for you inside of the offer process. Again, this is something that is getting waived. Sometimes what will happen is the finance is tied to finance contingency, but if you're not borrowing like the max amount, your home could come in under appraisal, but still be okay with your lender because maybe you're not trying to borrow that much money, right? So there are things to talk through that with your lender. So I always say, I want your lender to weigh in on waiving any contingencies around finance or appraisal, right? Because that is directly tied to your financing. So those are the three primary contingencies. There is a certain scenario where, like, if you're using a VA loan, that an appraisal is required, even if you waive your financing. So there are ways to kind of manage that if you still want to do what we call a clean offer. So what is very popular in the Northern Virginia area, especially inside the Beltway, is doing what we call a clean offer. So what that means is that there is no home inspection, no finance contingency, or no appraisal contingency. Now, that is not the only way to win a contract, but I will say that sometimes with the very popular homes, there are situations where we do need to do that aggressive of an offer, but it is not a requirement, and you should always be very comfortable with whatever offer you put in. Okay. So inspection period. So this is just talking about the home inspection. We talked about this. It depends on if you do a pre-inspection or if you do an inspection inside of your offer. Appraisal we talked about as well. So this is just, again, appraising the value of the home before it goes to closing. And then your finance and other contingencies, and then your final walkthrough. So before you go to closing, you will do a final walkthrough of the home. What you do is basically ensure that everything is in the same working condition as it was on the day that you actually put the offer into the house. And if it is, then you are good to go. We let the other side know, the seller side know, that everything is good to go. And then you're ready to close. So closing day, basically you come in, you sign a ton of papers, you take ownership of the home, and you get a big hip hip hooray because you've purchased your first home, or maybe your second home, actually. So what you can expect from me, I am a straight shooter when it comes to real estate. I am a believer in being direct and straightforward. I don't like a lot of BS. It just is what it is. This is a very important decision and a big move for people to make. And it's a very large financial commitment. And so I prefer to just be very straightforward when it comes to this and just ensure that everyone is protected and covered in the process. So I also have some reviews of some of my clients in here. As I said, you'll get a copy of this if you work with me. This is my contact information. Please reach out. I do have the shop in Falls Church City called Stylish Patina Home. It's right on Broad Street next to Lemon Lane Consignment, Rare Bird, across from the Harris Teeter. Swing in. I have got my manager there is Catherine. She's fantastic. She also works with me on the real estate side of things as well. You can always go in there and chat with them, or feel free to text me or call me. I am here to be a resource for you. And I would love to connect you with some amazing some amazing lenders in the area. If you want to think about things, or if you just have some basic questions, please reach out. There is no question that is silly. Honestly, this is very big decision and there's a lot of questions to be had. So I look forward to chatting with you, and I hope you have a great day.